Hello, my beautiful bookish people. I have been asked to talk about my top 5 fantasy series, and I'm constraining this to the adult category, or something that is still very fitting for adult even if they have younger characters, because it's high fantasy and very much that. So younger readers may not be as much into it, though they could totally go read it. I'm also constraining it to series that are finished, because there are several series coming out right now that I am super into, but the last book isn't out yet, so I don't know where it'll stack up in the end, because the other books are finished. So, with that in mind, let's get into my top 5 favorite fantasy series. I'm debating if I should go in order of my most favorite or least favorite, but honestly, if they've all made this list, they're all pretty good to me. Yeah, I'm just gonna say that they're all on this list and in no particular order, because I like them all. There are a few on here that I like more than others, but I do thoroughly enjoy them all. So, I guess because this is what I have on my list at the moment, we'll start with The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan, because this is the first chronologically released book in the Wheel of Time series, and I'm still in the process of reading The Wheel of Time, but I've also been in the process of reading The Wheel of Time for a few years now, and I've restarted the series twice, so I'm on my 3rd read-through, and I am getting something new out of these books every time, so I don't mind the reread, which, as long as it has high rereadability, it's probably going to rank higher up on my lists, because I like books that I can get something out of more the more times I read them, if that makes sense, which I think it does. Anyways, this is the book description on Goodreads for The Eye of the World. The wheel of time turns, and ages come and pass. What was, what will be, and what is, may yet fall under the shadow. Let the dragon ride again on the winds of time. The wheel of time turns, and ages come and go, leaving memories that become legend. Legend fades to myth, and even myth is long forgotten when the age that gave it birth returns again. In the 3rd age, an age of prophecy, the world and time themselves hang in the balance. What was, what will be, and what is, may yet fall under the shadow. When the 2 Rivers is attacked by Trollocs, a savage tribe of half-men, half-beasts, 5 villagers flee that night into a world they barely imagined, with new dangers waiting in the shadows and in the light. So, yes, this is descriptive of what is to come in the series, but this isn't a great job at describing the first book. The first book is very much a setup for the rest of the series, and very much a getting to know the main 5 characters. Well, okay, a little bit more than that. There's a ton of characters in this series, so if you can't track a ton of characters, you don't necessarily need to hardcore track all of them, but I'm just warning you, there's a lot. It's a lot. I mean, there's 14 books in this series? It's just all a lot. So, the first time I read this series, I almost didn't make it through the first book because I was kind of bored and I wasn't super in the mood for this brand of fantasy at the time. And I kept reading through it because it's my husband's favorite series. And I'm really glad that I kept going and got through to the end, because the end is really neat and it's where things start to really happen. But fair warning, it takes a while to get into this series, and there's a lot. It's a commitment, and I'm still working on my commitment, but I'm really enjoying my experience of reading it and rereading it, because there's just so much going on, and sometimes I need that in my life. The next series I want to talk about is the Licanius Trilogy by James Islington. Or is it Islington? I don't know how to say names. This is a series I was reading in tandem with The Wheel of Time at first, which was a mistake. Not that the magic systems are super similar, but I was getting the two books and the magic systems confused when I was first reading them. So that's a thing that happened to me. I really want to go back and reread the series now that it's all out, because I read part of it once it was already out, and then I reread part of it to get to the third book when it released. I think I want to say that the last book was released in 2019. Yeah, it was 2019, I want to say. So it's been a while since I've read these, but I do remember really enjoying them. And when I reread them, I got more out of it than the first time I read it, which means I like it a lot. So the first book in the series is The Shadow of What Was Lost, and I will read you the book description. It has been 20 years since the end of the war. The dictatorial augurs, once thought of almost as gods, were overthrown and wiped out during the conflict, their much feared powers mysteriously failing them. Those who had ruled under them, men and women with a lesser ability known as the gift, avoided the augur's fate only by submitting themselves to the rebellion's 4 tenets. A representation of these laws is now written into the flesh of any who use the gift, forcing those so marked into absolute obedience. As a student of the gifted, Davian suffers the consequences of a war fought and lost before he was born. Despised by most beyond the school walls, he and those around him are all but prisoners as they attempt to learn control of the gift. Worse, as Davian struggles with his lessons, he knows that there is further to fall if he cannot pass his final tests. But when Davian discovers that he has the ability to wield the forbidden power of the augurs, he sets into motion a chain of events that will change everything. To the north, an ancient enemy long thought defeated begins to stir, and to the west, a young man whose fate is intertwined with Davian's wakes up in the forest, covered in blood and with no memory of who he is. And yes, that is a very good description for the first book, and I kind of want to go reread the series now. Moving on, we have the Lightbringer series by Brent. This series has 5 books in it, all of which I found very intriguing. The first book of which is also the hardest to get through because of so much negative self-talk surrounding weight. So if that is a thing that is not healthy for you, do not pick this series up. Please do not. But if that is something you don't mind working through, then I think you may end up liking this series, because this magic system is based off of light and what the different colors of light can do. So, I mean, it's called the Black Prism, so I'll just read you the synopsis. Guile is the prism, the most powerful man in the world. He is high priest and emperor, a man whose power, wit, and charm are all that preserves a tenuous peace. Yet prisms never last, and Guile knows exactly how long he has left to live. When Guile discovers he has a son, born in a far kingdom after the war that put him in power, he must decide how much he's willing to pay to protect a secret that could tear his world apart. And yeah, that's a pretty good explanation of what is happening in this book, and also it's very much foreshadowing with what happens in the rest of the series. And reading that now after I've finished it, I'm like, aha, thing you hinted at a long time ago, and it happens way later, and just haha. What am I doing? I don't know. Anyways, if light magic and just getting to know a world and some of its people and going on this really trippy mental journey with some of the characters sounds like a fun time for you, then I think you would really enjoy this series. But again, there's a lot of negative self-talk. They do talk about that later on in the series, and there is growth around that, but just be aware of that. Next up, we have the Broken Earth Trilogy by N.K. Jemisin. The first book is the 5th season, and this series blew my mind, and I cannot wait until I forget enough of it so that I can... Yes, Balder, would you like to add something about the Broken Earth? Next up, we have... Really, Balder? Next up, we have the Broken Earth Trilogy by N.K. Jemisin, the first book of which is the 5th season. When I first read this series, it was absolutely blowing my mind, and I cannot wait until I forget enough of it so that I can reread it, because, oh my god, was it a great experience reading it! Especially for all of the fantastic representation that is in this book. There's just so many. I'm not even going to try to name it right here. Just know that if you're looking for diverse fantasy reads that is just unlike anything else I've ever read on the market, you need to pick this series up so much. And yes, while it is marketed as a story about a mother and a daughter, it's not just that. It's very much not just that, and while they do have some interaction, it's not like ooh-woo mother-daughter bonding time, because that is not a genre that I would be that interested in, personally, myself. And this series does not do that, so I know that I've told a few people about this series, and they were like, yeah, but it's supposed to be about a mother-daughter relationship, mainly. I'm like, yeah, that's a story beat, but it doesn't focus all on that. Like, it's hard to explain without giving away spoilers, so I'm just gonna not. But also, if you've never read the series before and you want to feel like your buddy reading it, I did a whole series on my blog when I was reading this through for the first time, at least with the first book, and I basically did reactions to every chapter. So if you're interested in checking that out and you're gonna check the series out for the first time, or you just want to see my experience of me getting my mind blown for the first time reading this book, then go check that out. I'll link it down in the description. And here's the actual book description. This is the way the world ends for the last time. It starts with the great red rift across the heart of the world's sole continent, spewing ash that blots out the sun. It starts with death, with a murdered son and a missing daughter. It starts with betrayal, and long dormant wounds rising up to fester. This is the stillness, a land familiar with catastrophe, where the power of the earth is wielded as a weapon, and where there is no mercy. And yes, absolutely, it's gonna be a hard time for our main characters, because it's a lot. It's a lot. I'm just gonna read you the first page of this story, because it's just so good and I want everyone to read it. Prologue. You are here. Let's start with the end of the world, why don't we? Get it over with and move on to more interesting things. First, a personal ending. There is a thing she will think over and over in the days to come, as she imagines how her son died and tries to make sense of something so innately senseless. She will cover Yuke's broken little body with a blanket, except his face, because he is afraid of the dark, and she will sit beside it numb, and she will pay no attention to the world that is ending outside. The world has already ended within her, and neither ending is for the first time. She's old hat at this by now. What she thinks then and thereafter is, but he was free. And it is her bitter, weary self that answers this almost question every time her bewildered, shocked self manages to produce it. He wasn't. Not really. But now he will be. But you need context. Let's try the ending again. Writ continentally. Here is a land. Do I need to say anything else? Please pick up this series if you haven't already. I need everyone to read it and talk about how fabulous it is. Because unlike some of the other series I've already talked about, this covers some really hard-hitting topics very, very well. And I love it so much. And last on my top 5 fantasy series at the moment is the Farseer Trilogy by Robin Hobb. And I just read these last week, and I've had a book hangover since because this series is so good. How did a book that came out in 1995 in fantasy do such a great job at sneaking in fantastic female representation and, dare I say, non-binary representation and get to a bestsellers list in 1995? Do I need to say more? It's fabulous! I need everyone to read Robin Hobb now, because now I'm having a really hard time picking between my favorite authors of all time, because M.K. Jemisin and Robin Hobb, they're just, I don't know, man. I don't know who's gonna be my favorite. I don't know that I need to pick a number 1 and a number 2 and just have them, sitting up there holding their own, because they're very different types of fantasy books. Very different. But also fabulous representation in both of their types of writing, and I love them so much. And I'm really, really glad that the Farseer Trilogy got a re-release in hardback with illustrations. That's just so cool. If I was an author and was like, hey, my book's been around for 20 or 25 years, let's do a re-release. And this artist that I really like is gonna do the art for it, and I would just be so happy. Oh my gosh. But also, does this not give you storybook vibes, but also high fantasy at the same time? And also, I'm trying to find an art page. Why can I not find it right now when I'm trying to show it off? Of course. This is how my life works. Anytime I look for something that I really want to talk about, I instantly forget where it is. Here's one. It's spooky, and it's totally accurate to what's being described in the book, and I love when I can get illustrations, because my brain, it reads the words, it kind of imagines what's there, but it doesn't really stick in my head as much as actually seeing it, and I'm really glad that I get to see it. That's just so cool. So while the Farseer Trilogy all has Assassin's Apprentice, I don't remember the names of the other ones right now because
mind fart.
There is an assassin. There are assassin things that happen, but it's not the story of a bunch of assassinations, if that makes sense. So let me read you the description of the 25th anniversary edition, and then I'll go back and actually read the book blurb that goes directly with Assassin's Apprentice, and then we'll talk some more. 25 years ago, Robin Hobb's first novel featuring Fitzchivalry Farseer and his mysterious, often maddening friend the Fool struck like a bolt of brilliant lightning. Thus began a beloved saga spanning multiple series full of adventure, magic, and sinister plots. To celebrate a quarter-century of wonder, this special edition of Assassin's Apprentice presents a modern classic as it's never been seen before, in hardcover with 10 beautiful full-color illustrations by Magali Villanueva. Now for the original book description, as found on Goodreads. In a faraway land where members of the royal family are named for the virtues they embody, one young boy will become a walking enigma. Born on the wrong side of the sheets, Fitz, son of Chivalry Farseer, is a royal bastard cast out into the wild, friendless and lonely. Only his magical link with animals, the old art known as the wit, gives him solace and companionship. But the wit, if used too often, is a perilous magic, and one abhorred by the nobility. So when Fitz is finally adopted into the royal household, he must give up his old ways and embrace a new life of weaponry, scribing, courtly manners and how to kill a man secretly as he trains to become a royal assassin. And this book series is much more about the journey and the characters than it is about the assassinations. So I just want to make that clear. Also, you might want to keep a handkerchief nearby because Robin Hobb is never nice to Fitz, ever. And there are many sad things that happen, so just be prepared to feel all the feels while you're reading this book. I'm not going to say that it's going to make you cry buckets, but there are many moments where I just went, no! No, don't do that to me! No! And I am just super invested into Fitz's life now, and I am especially interested to see in the long run what happens to the Fool, and there are 18, 22 books, something along that line, set in this world now, and I think Fitz's line is finally done, so I'm really excited to binge read all of these books in this world. Thankfully, they are divided into trilogies, which makes it a lot easier on me because I totally did nothing but sit around and read this trilogy because I was so invested into what was going on. It starts out as magical realism, and as you get deeper and deeper into the series, it becomes more high fantasy, but also still keeps that aspect of magical realism to it. And now that I've finished the first trilogy and see what all is available in this world, I'm super excited to see what happens in the rest of it. So, I'm just... Would all of my top 5 be Robin Hobb books if I'd read them all by now? I don't know, but we'll find out if I ever update this video and turn it into a series where I check in like once every year or 2 or 3. I don't know. Tell me in the comments, how often should we do this check-in to see my top series? And if you'd like to see anything else and have an idea that you'd like my thoughts on, because that's where this video idea came from, was from you, the people, please do let me know in the comments below. And if you've made it this far, leave me a rock emoji. Is there a rock emoji? I need to know now. Yes, there is one. Leave me a rock emoji or just the word rock in the comments below. And until then, I will see you in the next video. Bye!